As he said last week, Steve is currently in Granby with his family. In the last batch of footage he sent before returning home, he visited an incredible oyster farm on North Haven Island. But we'll start back in Rockland, where it was starting to get crowded and very hot.
I think these would look really pretty on the boat. This one.
What do you think, Akiva? I think it's too hot. I think it's entirely too hot. And the cruise ships are coming in. So cruise ships plus heat equals time to go. They ran a hose to the cruise ship. It's been running all day. And it's been leaking. And it's been flooding this poor wooden boat here. It's just full of water. Oh, the fresh water kind of feels good on this hot day. But let's do my good act for the day and get this poor person's boat bailed out. And I moved the hose, so it's just leaking in the water now. I think it's time to leave Rockland for a little bit. But thankfully, we've got some options. So we looked at the forecast, and we've got no wind today. And then we've got a couple nice days. And then 3 days from now, there's supposed to be some weather coming in. And we should see some probably bigger winds and waves than we want to be out in. So we're gonna take off here in a little bit. We're gonna do some motoring. We gotta charge our battery bank up. Robin's been working a lot this last week, so Starlink and the computer and the monitor have been going, and it's been slowly ticking down the batteries. So it's kind of in a good way that we don't have any wind, since we do kind of have to motor and run that alternator and that wake speed and get that battery charged up for these couple cloudy days we have coming up. So let's head off to North Haven, where we were last year when we hid from the hurricane, and go spend a couple days there and then start bumping around Penobscot Bay. We have to stay within about a day or so of Rockland here. We can't go too far, so that if we do get the phone call that we've got to get back to Massachusetts, we can beat feet back here, tie up to the mooring, and jump in the truck and head south. But thankfully, Penobscot Bay is a really amazing cruising ground, and there's a ton of islands and things to go check out. So let's get to it.
The last time Arabella sailed into Pulpit Harbor was to escape the wind and waves of Hurricane Lee last September. This time it was providing relief from the heat. After only a few hours of motoring, the temperature had dropped considerably. And unlike the last visit where the harbor was empty, it was now full of some of the most famous of Maine's schooners. The next morning, Steve went out to meet up with Adam Campbell, who owns and operates the North Haven Oyster Company. There's more than one thing that makes this oyster farm special, and he's been working on doing things a bit differently here on this 17-acre salt pond for the last 25 years.
Adam farms oysters on either side of a porous dam on a little bit of a tidal creek. So I didn't expect this, but when we came across the little dam, went down at low tide, it was like a wild oyster bed. And that is where they harvest the oysters from, below the dam. And Adam explained that they do this for a few reasons. One, you can grow oysters in a bag or a box from the time that they are what they call a little seed all the way until they are harvestable size. And what Adam does is grows them until they are big enough to basically have a good chance of surviving in the wild. And then they get put down below the dam and just spread out in this mud where at low tide, really low tides, they might be exposed and they've got saltish, brackish water just flowing over them with all of the tides. And they put the oysters there, let them grow naturally in the mud, and then go out and collect them.
This one, too small. You know, that's last year's seed right there, which is doing excellent. And then we just walk along the whole oyster bed, and we just go for the larger ones. And we try and spread out and move around so we don't concentrate in one spot, so we don't get ones that get too big. Because if they get hidden in the mud, they can get too big.
So some oysters manage to stay a little bit hidden and not be detected for a year or two or three, and by that time they're bigger than what North Haven likes to harvest for their oysters. By having this bed that he's continually supplying new oysters to and harvesting from, he also has oysters that are essentially now established in wild, creating their own spawn and creating their own oysters. So the way Adam explained it was that if the farms that produce this oyster seed that they rely on had some sort of a hiccup and it wasn't available, this natural oyster bed that he's creating would still be producing oysters. And by having this kind of natural bed that he's maintaining and harvesting from, they're also just spreading that seed out into the creek and down into the bay, and who knows where those wild oysters may be taking up residence.
So I buy my seed in the spring of the year, late June, early July, and we get it at 1 millimeter from the hatchery. And so that's what it looks like, this little tiny speck right there. And then we grow it in an upweller, which is a float basically that gently pumps water past the baby oysters. So this is the upweller, and then we take it out, and this one went into a bag about there to there. So that's 1 summer, 2 year, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So this oyster's 9 years old. Pretty cool.
Oh, wow.
So the oyster landed in the mud here, and then it was like, oh, I can't feed that well, so it was in the mud like that, and then it grew up this way. Isn't that neat? Oh, I love it when they do this. So these beautiful flutes, I just think that's the most gorgeous thing on earth right there.
And what causes the fluting like that?
It's the rushing of the water and being on the bottom, you get these flutes. So this is what I did. This is how big the seed was when it went down here, and then this is what Mother Nature does. Way prettier job than me. So this is an upweller. There's an electric motor here with a propeller on it, and it blows the water out of this box. It makes the water come up through these holes. And so I've got some 5-gallon buckets over here with fine mesh on them. So when we get our seed, we'll put it in the 5-gallon buckets, put it in here. The water gently goes past the baby oysters. And they're just feeding on the algae that goes by, and they grow really quickly. And then once they're big enough, we'll put them into the cedar boxes and then float them out on the pond out here. Almost like 99% plastic-free oyster farm. And that's my goal, is to share that with other people. It's doable, and we just can't be putting plastic in the ocean. It's like spoiling your own nest, and it really pisses me off. So anyone listening on YouTube, no plastic in the ocean. I'm going to Vermont, and I'm going to a willow basket making class with my girlfriend.
Oh, cool.
And we're getting rid of these. No more plastic. So I'm going to make willow baskets to put the oyster seed in and lug it around, and the market oysters.
Is this your anchor?
It's the anchor.
The more intensive early starts of the process are up in the salt pond, which is behind the dam. So that's fed by some freshwater waterways, and then when the tide rises, the water flows through the dam. It's porous and floods the salt pond. And when the tide goes out, it comes out. So it's brackish water. It's not fresh, it's not salt, it's somewhere in the middle in the pond. And the pond, because it's shallow, warms up, which the oysters really like. Maine is not super traditionally oyster territory. It's traditionally been a little too cold, but that's changing, and places like these salt ponds make it easier because those temperatures come up.
So the day in the life of an oyster farmer is, you got to flip those over, right? When they start to get fouling on them, they'll start to grow kelp and sea squirts.
Before Adam started oyster farming, he was a lobsterman, and he did it at kind of an interesting time. So when he first started, they used wooden crates to store and keep the lobsters. And plastic crates became available, and they were lighter and they stacked and they're a bit more durable, so everybody switched pretty quickly. And what the lobstermen would do is catch the lobsters, and sometimes they would keep them for whatever reason for a little bit of time before they went to market. And they would do this in a wooden crate, and Adam said that there were times where they would overwinter lobsters, and as long as they were banded so they couldn't fight with each other, they would live all winter long in these big wooden crates in the bay and be fine. When they switched to the plastic crates that they use, he said they had a storm come in, and so they threw the lobsters in the plastic crates and floated them, and within a short period of time there would be a lobster or two that had died. And Adam's theory was that it was because of the off-gassing from the plastic, and that the lobsters were sensitive to it, and that's why he personally was seeing the lobsters live a lot longer in these wooden crates being floated than in the plastic ones. And he said that kind of just always stuck in his mind.
I want to talk about plastic. So most everyone in the oyster business uses this. This is a oyster bag with floats, and the way this works is basically you get your seed up to a size where it won't fall through the meshes, and you can put quite a bit of seed in here depending on what size you want it to get to, but 200 to 500 baby oysters in there, to double the size or whatever you're after, and then reduce the amount of oysters in it, and then you can grow the oysters to market size in this bag. And that's typically what a lot of farmers do, pretty much all over the country and all over the world. There's a lot of different ways to do it, but that's the standard here in Maine right now. And I resisted buying these for years because I just didn't want to put plastic in this environment. And luckily, there was a grant opportunity from the Nature Conservancy looking for innovations in the aquaculture industry. So I've been doing this for 25 years, and I'm like, I got some innovations. So my dream was to design, build, deploy, and grow oysters in a non-plastic vessel. So this is a cedar crate that it's basically a copy of a old school Maine wooden lobster crate. You don't want to try and reinvent the wheel. So this is just a scaled down version of that. It's white cedar. This is 1.5 inches on this side, and then white cedar slats, and these are stainless staples. We did this control, so we put 200 baby oysters in this bag here, plastic bag, and then we put 200 oysters in this cedar crate. We did 100 crates and 100 plastic, and we tended it all summer, flipped it at the same time, and we had this huge rainstorm in the fall, so everything had to come out, and we took the skiff or the barge and we started emptying these alongside these, either side. When we got done, we had 7 bushel of seed out of the plastic, and we had 11 bushel of seed out of the cedar. So they grow oysters faster, baby oysters faster. And I kind of know why. My hypothesis is oysters are smart. So when red tide shows up, they're the last ones to absorb red tide or eat red tide. So clams, mussels, scallops, they'll feed on red tide. An American oyster will resist eating that or feeding during a red tide event for weeks. So if they're smart enough not to feed on red tide, they're smart enough not to cycle microplastics or off-gassing from that. And that's the reason I believe that they grow faster in this crate. So I'm super stoked about that. The other cool thing is this bag will only last probably like 8 to 10 years. This cedar crate can last 20 years plus, and I'll prove it to you. This is a Maine pot buoy from, I can't really date it, but these were made illegal because people would get that in their wheel, in a sailboat or a powerboat, and create a lot of havoc. But this is a Maine pot buoy made out of cedar, probably from the 40s. And so if this is still kicking around, that cedar crate will still kick around.
Yeah, I mean, cedar planks on sailboats will go 100 years.
100 years, really. That's so sweet.
I mean, I doubt you'll get 100 years out of the crate with the wear and tear, but...
Yeah. So when I had all these brand new crates piled up here, rigging them up, my son was doing a bee talk. He's got an apiary over here, and this lady wandered over, and she goes, "Hi, my name's Sue. I'm the mushroom lady." And I'm like, "The mushroom lady?" And she goes, "Yeah, I make mycelium buoys for fishermen, or working on it." And she goes, "You're gonna need a float for this crate to dry it out." And I'm like, "Yeah." She goes, "You want me to make you some buoys?" And I'm like, "Yeah." So it's year number 3. And then this buoy here is made out of hemp and mycelium. They actually grow this buoy, right? So this goes on the crate like this. Put that on there like that. And then you flip this over, and now you can air dry this crate. Super slick, right? Like incredible stuff. We're still testing them and trying to fine tune it. But everything here, there's a little bit of nylon on that, and this is old pot warp I had. So that's 99% plastic free, and I just can't say enough about it.
For Adam, he gets bigger oysters quicker, and he gets to not be putting plastic into the environment in nearly the degree that traditional oyster farming uses, and gets to employ local craftspeople harvesting timber and making them as well. So I think this is really cool, and I could see this kind of catching on. So with Adam's blessing, I passed this information on to Jack and Scott, because Jack mills a lot of cedar, and these could be certainly made out of the waste cedar from Jack's milling. And Scott took a lot of the tools, the stationary tools from Arabella, and has them put to use in his shop. And producing oyster crates is something that Scott is way more than capable of doing. So those two guys are working on it, and I will check in with them. But I think pretty soon Scott should have some cedar oyster crates available for anybody who would be interested in farming oysters, either large scale or small scale, and giving it a try.
For the time being, this is the end of regular Friday videos. Steve has managed to make it back to the boat to pick up Victoria, and that's back with him in Granby, where he's already started making a few repairs to it. We're hoping to have a video about that to show you in a couple weeks, so stay tuned for more updates. If you're helping us out through Patreon right now, we are so grateful to you. It's helping us keep going while we wait to return to regular video making. Thank you all so much for the support.
And they're not any tougher, like if you were to eat this. It's just bigger, right? So it's not like chewier or anything like that. So you take that and put it on the grill and steam that off, or take the top off and turn it into Oysters Rockefeller. You got something. Or what I like to do, one of my favorite things to do, is to shuck a bunch out and then deep fry them in some Crisco. And I got a recipe from a friend of mine in Texas. You do half cornmeal, half flour, dry, and mix that up, and then dredge the oyster through that, and cast iron skillet with some hot oil in it, and brown it on both sides. Make your own sauce, your own not cocktail sauce, but the other one, and it's amazing. If I got like a really big day, I got to do a lot of work, I'll fry up some oysters, and it's like superfood the next day. I'm just like, power.
So if someone wanted to buy big oysters like this to do something like that, how would they go about finding giant oysters?
So you want to go to a farm that has that does bottom culture, and they'll have some of these clunkers kicking around. And some people really, and I don't know about a lot, but there's people out there that utilize these oysters. We don't sell them. We sell for the cocktail market. But if someone asks me for these big oysters, I'll harvest whatever they want.